You are on Crocodile's True Stories channel. Enjoy listening.
Started with a feeling I couldn't shake. One of those gut instincts you try to ignore because the alternative is too hard to admit, that maybe the person you trust the most is slowly becoming a stranger. That evening, Emma stood in front of our bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting her earrings. She wasn't in a rush. She was measured, intentional, every move calculated, like someone preparing for a scene rather than just another work dinner. "You're going out like that for a business meeting?" I said, half joking. I kept my voice light, trying not to sound like I was accusing her of anything, because I wasn't, at least not yet. But something felt off. She glanced over her shoulder at me with a look that was just a little too blank. "Yeah, just dinner with the team. It's nothing fancy." I nodded, watching as she spritzed on perfume. Something new. Jasmine, maybe? No, too sharp. Not the warm, cozy scent I was used to. This one was bold. It lingered. "You don't usually wear that one," I said. She froze for half a second, barely noticeable, then went back to adjusting her dress in the mirror. "Oh, I just got it last week. Sample from a client. Figured I'd try it." That could have been the truth. Emma worked in marketing, mostly for fashion and lifestyle brands. Free stuff showed up at our doorstep all the time. So it wasn't the perfume alone, or the dress, or the hair. It was how she carried herself. Poised, guarded, like she was anticipating being watched, but not by me. "You'll be home late?" I asked. She nodded. "Probably. I'll text if it runs too long." Then she paused. It was subtle, but I saw it. Her hand on the doorknob lingered. Her shoulders stiffened. She looked like she was waiting for something. For me to say something. Maybe to ask her not to go. Maybe to call out whatever tension had been living between us for the last few weeks. But I didn't say anything. I just gave her a quick smile and said, "Have fun," and she walked out the door. I stared at the closed door for a long time after she left. Something about her expression haunted me. There was hesitation there, like guilt trying to stay hidden. A flicker in her eyes that didn't belong in a marriage built on honesty. I didn't have proof. I didn't even have a real reason. Just that look. That one damn look. Still, I brushed it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. She was probably just stressed. We'd both been off lately. Long hours. Missed dinners. Quiet evenings spent scrolling through our phones instead of talking. Maybe we were just in a rut. That happens, right? Around 9 that night, I was halfway through a rerun of a show I wasn't really watching when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was Emma checking in, but it wasn't a text. It was a delivery notification. "Your flowers have been delivered to 86 Hillcrest Drive." From Nathan M. I stared at the message. My first reaction wasn't confusion. It was denial. I hadn't ordered flowers. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe a wrong number or some glitch in the system. But it had my full name. My name. And not just my first name, but the exact one I used for online purchases. That wasn't random. I opened the delivery confirmation and tapped on the link. A photo of the drop-off popped up, white flowers, maybe lilies, left at the front porch of a beige house with ivy on the railing and a stone walkway. I recognized the street name vaguely, Hillcrest. It wasn't far, but definitely not an office building. A quick Google search confirmed it. A private residence in a nice part of town. Not a restaurant. Not a hotel. Just someone's house. And suddenly, that look in her eyes before she left. It had context. I didn't jump to conclusions. Not yet. I told myself there were other explanations. Maybe her boss lived there. Maybe the team rented it for a meeting. Maybe she really did send flowers as a gesture, and for some reason used my name on the form. People make mistakes when ordering online all the time. Maybe this was nothing. I left the notification open on my phone for hours. By the time Emma walked through the door, closer to midnight, I was sitting on the couch, the glow of the TV still flickering across the room. She looked surprised to see me awake. "Hey," she said, toeing off her heels. "Didn't expect you to still be up." "Couldn't sleep," I replied, watching her closely. "How was the dinner?" "Long," she said, setting her bag down on the counter. "But good." Exhausting, though. Our lead has a million questions. She poured herself a glass of water like she did every night, moving through the kitchen like it was just another Thursday. Her dress clung a little more now, her makeup faded. Her voice had a practiced ease. Not overly cheerful, not too casual. Perfectly in the middle. I hesitated, then said, "Got a weird delivery notification tonight. Said I sent flowers to someone on Hillcrest." She paused mid-sip, just long enough to be noticeable. "Oh, yeah, that was me." She gave a quick laugh. "I forgot I used the joint account. I sent them to Dana, my boss. She just moved into a new place. That's where the dinner was, actually. I thought it'd be a nice touch, you know? She's been kind of stressed." She said it all so smoothly, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. They were just a hair off, like someone playing a role and hoping I wouldn't read between the lines. "You used my name? Just clicked through too fast, I guess. It defaulted to your info. I didn't even notice until after." The explanation worked. On paper. But in my gut, something didn't sit right. I nodded slowly and gave her a neutral smile. "That makes sense." She seemed relieved, like a tension in her spine released. She kissed me on the cheek, murmured good night, and disappeared into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch long after she left the room. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't the flowers, or even the timing. It was the way she delivered the lie, if it was a lie, with such calm precision, like it wasn't the first time she'd had to explain something she didn't expect me to ask about. Like she was prepared. That scared me more than anything. Because when you're married, trust isn't just about what someone says. It's about what they don't say. And tonight, Emma didn't say a lot. The next morning, I stared at her across the breakfast table while she scrolled her phone, sipping coffee. Everything looked normal. She even laughed at something on her screen. But I couldn't unsee it. The dress, the new perfume, the hesitation at the door, the fake ease in her voice, the look in her eyes when I mentioned the flowers. It wasn't just the bouquet. It was the beginning. And I knew it. After the flowers, things didn't go back to normal. Not really. On the surface, they did. We still had our Sunday morning routines, our shared playlists on long drives, our inside jokes over takeout. But underneath it all, something fundamental had shifted. I began watching Emma in ways I never had before. Not because I didn't trust her, but because part of me knew I couldn't afford to anymore. That's the part that hurts the most. Realizing you're in a relationship where trust has become something you have to ration, like oxygen in a fire. It started with the little things. Passwords. She used to share everything, emails, calendars, even the dumb fingerprint unlock for her phone when we were driving and she needed me to send a message. One night, I picked up her phone to check the weather, and it asked for a passcode. I blinked at the screen like it was in a different language. "Hey," I said casually, holding it up. "Did your passcode change?" She glanced over from the couch. "Yeah, work stuff. IT said I needed a stronger security setup. I'll give it to you later." But she never did. At first, I let it go. Told myself I was being paranoid. Work policies were always changing, right? But that was just the first thread. And once I tugged on it, more started to unravel. She used to post us all the time. Photos from hiking trips, lazy Saturdays, even random selfies in the car. People joked about how we were that couple, the kind that made marriage look effortless. But then I noticed something. Our photos were disappearing. Not all at once, but gradually. Picture here, a story there. The ones of us together, specifically. I didn't say anything right away. I told myself maybe she was curating her profile or going through some kind of social media detox. But that same week, I saw her post a photo of her wine glass at some rooftop bar with the caption, "Nothing like a solo reset." Solo. She told me she was working late that night. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table, the overhead light buzzing faintly, staring at that photo on my phone while the clock blinked 10:47 p.m. On the microwave. I should have texted her. Should have asked. But I didn't, because some part of me wasn't ready to hear the answer. And that's when the memories started coming back. The late nights. The trips that never made sense. The friend she suddenly had to visit in another state. That solo trip to Portland, she said, was about self-care and silence, where she said she needed time to reconnect with herself. I didn't question it then. I even drove her to the airport, told her I was proud she was taking care of herself. But now, I don't know. Maybe that whole trip had nothing to do with silence. Maybe it had everything to do with secrecy. The more I thought about it, the more the details stopped lining up. I remembered the time she came home from that trip and her suitcase was missing one of the tags I had attached myself. She brushed it off as an airport mistake. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Because back then, I was still living in the version of our marriage that I wanted to believe in. The one where she was just busy. The one where love meant not questioning every detail. I didn't realize I was walking barefoot across a floor scattered with broken glass. I had just trained myself not to feel the cuts. It was easy to dismiss things in isolation. That's how trust works. It gives the benefit of the doubt. But now I was collecting these little moments, one by one, like puzzle pieces on a table. And I couldn't stop the image that was starting to take shape. She got more secretive with her schedule. I'd ask what her plans were for the weekend, and she'd shrug. Not sure yet. Probably just errands. Maybe catch up with Danny. Danny was her go-to-friend excuse, the one she always seemed to be visiting or texting but never actually brought around anymore. So I reached out to Danny myself. Harmless. Just a message on Instagram. Hey, haven't seen you in a while. Hope you and Emma are good. Danny replied within minutes. Hey, I haven't seen Emma in forever. We keep saying we'll catch up, but work's been crazy. Miss you guys. And just like that, another piece slid into place. I didn't confront Emma that night, or the next. I wasn't ready to be the guy who demanded answers. Not yet. I wasn't even sure what I'd say. Hey, I think you're lying to me, but I can't prove it. Care to clarify? No, I wasn't ready to have that conversation. I was still hoping it was all in my head. But hope doesn't hold up well against patterns. And once I started seeing them, I couldn't unsee them. She started leaving earlier in the mornings. Not crazy early, but earlier than necessary. The kind of early that didn't quite line up with her usual routine. One morning, I asked, "Don't you have that 9 a.m. call from home?" She looked at me for half a second too long. Oh, rescheduled. Need to swing by the office first. Then she was gone. The scent of that same unfamiliar perfume drifting behind her. The weird part? I didn't feel anger. Not at first. Just numbness. The kind that creeps in slowly, wrapping around your chest like fog. I'd always imagined that if something like this happened, if Emma ever cheated, I'd explode, rage, scream. But instead, I found myself moving through each day like I was stuck underwater, watching our life play out behind glass. I stopped asking questions. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew the answers. Or at least I thought I did. She was building a world just out of my reach, and the more I chased it, the more it felt like trying to hold on to smoke. I started testing little things. I'd ask casually about her day, who she met, what meetings she had, and I'd take mental notes. A few times, her stories changed. She'd mention a client meeting, but then reference being in the office all day. She'd talk about a team lunch at one place, but tag a different location in a post. Minor inconsistencies. Nothing conclusive. But lies, even small ones, echo louder when they come from someone who once told you everything. I began noticing she checked her phone constantly. But when I was near, it would go face down. Locked. She started taking longer showers. She kept her phone in the bathroom. She used to sing in the shower. Now she was silent. It was like watching her build a wall brick by brick. And every time I tried to peek over it, she laid another layer. I started keeping my own calendar, just private notes. Times she left. Times she came back. Days she claimed she was out with friends. Days when her phone went dark for hours. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to become a version of myself who doubted every breath she took. But I was already there, whether I wanted to be or not. I remember one night in particular. I woke up around 2 a.m. and she wasn't in bed. I walked out into the living room and found her sitting on the couch in the dark, scrolling her phone. When she saw me, she jumped. Couldn't sleep, she said quickly, locking her screen. Didn't want to wake you with the light. She smiled. It was tight, forced, the kind of smile you use to deflect, not invite questions. I nodded and went back to bed. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made pancakes, played music, danced barefoot in the kitchen like the version of her I remembered. But I couldn't feel the music anymore. I was too busy listening to the silence underneath it. Our home, once warm and open, now felt like a stage. Every word, every gesture calculated. Like she was acting in a play and I was the only one who didn't have a script. And through it all, I kept asking myself the same question. When did I stop being her person? The truth is, I think I knew the answer. I just didn't want to say it out loud. It happened on a Saturday. Just a regular, quiet Saturday, the kind you don't expect anything from. No tension, no suspicion, at least not on the surface. Emma told me she was heading to her mother's place for the day. Something about helping organize boxes from her childhood, maybe sort through old photo albums. I nodded, told her to give her mom my best, and she kissed my cheek like it was any other day. But as soon as the door closed behind her, something gnawed at me. Maybe it was the way she barely made eye contact. Maybe it was how light she packed for a full-day trip, or how she didn't take the cookies her mom always asked for when we visited. Or maybe, just maybe, it was instinct. That quiet, primal sense that someone you love is hiding something from you. I wasn't planning to follow her. I didn't wake up with that idea in mind. But 20 minutes after she left, I found myself getting into my car, trying to convince myself I was just going for a drive. I didn't even know where I was going until I was already there. Her car was parked in front of a house I didn't recognize. In a neighborhood I'd only ever passed through. Hillcrest. My stomach dropped the second I saw the street sign. Same area as the flower delivery. I pulled over a few houses away, far enough not to be seen, but close enough to see the house. Beige, modern, sleek. A perfect little secret tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac. Her car was there, just as plain as day, like she wasn't hiding at all. I waited. 10 minutes. Then 20. I kept telling myself to leave, to go home and forget I ever saw it. But something told me not to move. Something told me the truth was about to show its face. And if I left now, I'd never stop wondering. I slipped out of the car and circled around the block on foot, careful to stay hidden. When I came up the side street, I found the perfect vantage point. The backyard faced an open greenbelt, with only a low fence separating it from the trail. I crouched behind a hedge and looked through the patio doors. There she was. Emma stood in the kitchen, smiling. But not alone. A man stood across from her, tall, dark-haired, wearing a fitted gray shirt. I didn't recognize him. His posture was relaxed, casual, comfortable in that space, like it wasn't his first time there. They stood closer than strangers, closer than coworkers. Not touching, not yet, but they didn't have to. They didn't see me. They didn't know anyone was watching. And in that moment, they weren't performing. He poured her a glass of wine. She took it. Their fingers brushed and she didn't flinch. She smiled, soft and familiar. I knew that smile. I'd seen it 100 times, but never like that. Never pointed at someone else. I didn't need to see a kiss. I didn't need to hear a confession. Their body language told a story louder than words ever could. The way she looked at him, the way he looked back, wasn't professional. It wasn't platonic. It was int*mate. Comfortable. Quietly devastating. I should have felt rage. Or betrayal. But in that moment, I felt nothing. Not because it didn't hurt, it did. It split something inside me so cleanly, I didn't even realize how deep the cut went. But there was something about seeing it, finally, undeniably, that brought a strange kind of clarity. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't insecurity. It was real. I stood there for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. My mind was blank, my breathing steady. I felt like I was outside my body, watching a version of myself I didn't recognize. Eventually, I turned and walked back the way I came, each step heavier than the last. My hands were cold, my throat dry, my chest hollow. It was over, even if the words hadn't been said yet. The truth didn't need words. When I got back in my car, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world looked exactly the same, even though everything had just changed. The drive home felt endless. I took the long way, avoiding highways, avoiding people. Every memory of us played in my head like someone flipping through a photo album I hadn't agreed to open. Her laugh, our Sunday pancakes, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when we watched movies. The trip to Big Sur when we almost got lost and ended up finding that little cliff overlooking the ocean. All of it felt like a dream now, something I had borrowed, not something I had lived. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun had started to dip. Golden hour, that soft, perfect light that used to feel romantic. Now it felt cruel. Inside, everything was quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Her perfume still lingered in the air, light, floral, haunting. The new one. I thought about what to do. Confront her? Demand the truth she'd already shown me? Call her out and make her explain the unexplainable? But what was the point? She'd already made her choice. She just hadn't had the courage to admit it yet. So I did nothing. Not out of weakness, but because silence felt stronger than any confrontation. She had kept secrets behind glass. And now I had seen them for what they were, fragile, sharp, and built to shatter. Later that night, I heard the front door open. Her footsteps were light, careful, like someone sneaking into their own life. She peeked into the bedroom. "Hey," she said, voice easy, almost rehearsed. "Sorry. Mom kept me longer than I expected. We got lost in the boxes." I looked up at her. She smiled like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word. She stood there, waiting. I think she expected me to ask how it went. Maybe hug her. Maybe say something warm so she wouldn't have to lie again. But I didn't give her the cue. Eventually, she stepped away, mumbled something about taking a shower, and disappeared down the hall. The water ran for a long time. I lay back in bed and stared at the ceiling, hearing nothing but the rush of water and the dull throb of the truth in my chest. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't tell her what I saw. Not yet, because I wanted to see how long she would pretend. How long she could carry the lie without breaking under the weight of it. And somehow I already knew she would, because when someone chooses deception, they don't stop just because you've caught them. They stop when it becomes harder to lie than it is to leave. And Emma wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. So I waited in the silence she had created, knowing the next time she smiled at me, I'd be staring straight through it. The hardest part wasn't discovering the truth. It was pretending I hadn't. After that Saturday, everything changed except Emma. Or maybe that's not fair. Maybe she did change, just not in the ways that mattered. She still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still sent the occasional midday thinking of you text, still asked what I wanted for dinner like we were a team. But it was all theater. I knew it. She knew it. And neither of us said a word. That silence became the foundation of whatever it was we were still calling a marriage. In the days that followed, I waited for a confession. A slip, anything that would show she still had some ounce of truth left in her. But none came. She played the part flawlessly, better than I thought she could. And that made it worse. I started moving through the house like a ghost. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. There was something more powerful in the absence. The way I stopped asking where she'd been. The way I didn't react when she came home late. The way I didn't flinch when her phone lit up with messages she turned face down. She noticed. Of course she did. One night, maybe 4 days after I'd seen her with him, she walked into the kitchen while I was doing dishes. I didn't look up. I just kept scrubbing the plate in my hand like it had something more to say than she did. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "Have I?" I replied, drying the plate and setting it down. She hovered behind me, unsure of what to do with her hands. "Is everything okay?" That was the question, wasn't it? Everything? No, nothing was okay. Nothing had been okay for a long time. But I didn't say that. "I'm just tired," I said instead. "Long week." She stepped closer. "If something's wrong, you can tell me." That almost made me laugh. But I didn't. I just turned and met her eyes. Those same eyes I'd stared into for years, looking for honesty, for partnership, for love. Now I looked into them and saw walls. "Okay," I said. "Thanks." Then I walked past her. And that was when I felt it, the first crack in her mask. She flinched. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough for me to know she felt it too. The shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't yelling. It was distance. And she couldn't bridge it. That weekend, she didn't leave the house. Not once. She lingered around me like she was trying to rebuild something without admitting it had fallen apart. She asked about errands, about plans, about movies we used to watch. But I didn't bite. I answered when I had to, nodded when required, and let the silence speak when words couldn't. Sunday night, I came back from a walk to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her phone but not looking at it. Her eyes were red, her breathing uneven. "I need to tell you something," she said. I sat down in the armchair by the window, the one I always used to read in, back when our bedroom felt like a sanctuary instead of a stage. "I made a mistake," she said, barely above a whisper. I stayed silent. She looked down at her lap, twisted the ring on her finger. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't plan for it to happen. I got lost, and I didn't know how to come back." Still, I said nothing. She looked up at me, desperate. "It wasn't about you. It was about me." I was confused. I felt stuck, like I didn't know who I was anymore. That was when I stood up. Not in rage. Not to int asterisk mid-8. I just couldn't sit and listen to that speech any longer. "Don't," I said quietly, "don't try to shape this into something noble. You lied. You chose to lie." Her face crumbled. "Nathan, I'm sorry." I nodded. "I believe that, but it doesn't fix anything." She reached out for my hand, and I stepped back. That, I think, was the moment it truly broke for her. Not the confrontation, not the exposure, but the realization that she couldn't reach me anymore. That the man who once would have done anything to fix things wasn't standing in front of her. He was gone. The next morning, she tried to reset everything. She made breakfast, left a note on the counter, texted me throughout the day like nothing had happened. But I didn't respond. I came home late, didn't ask about her day, didn't mention the conversation from the night before. She met me at the door. "Are we really going to just ignore this?" she asked, voice shaking. "I'm not ignoring anything," I said. "I'm letting it be what it is." "And what is it?" she whispered. "Broken." She started crying. Not loudly, not performatively. It was that quiet, crumbling kind of cry, the kind that people do when they finally see what they've done, and who they've done it to. "I don't want to lose you," she said. "You already did," I replied. There was no cruelty in my voice, just truth, and that's what she couldn't fight. Over the next week, she sent long texts, paragraphs filled with apologies, rationalizations, declarations of love. I read them all, every word, but I didn't reply. What was the point? She had already told me what she needed to say, the moment she chose someone else. Everything else was a performance, a desperate attempt to rewind something that had already ended. One night, she came home with a box of photos from our early years. Vacations, holidays, birthdays, the candid moments in between. She spread them out across the coffee table and sat in front of them like they were some kind of offering. "I remember this day," she said, picking up one from our trip to the lake. "You made me laugh so hard." I dropped my phone in the water. I stood in the doorway, watching her run her fingers over the images. "I missed that version of us," she whispered. "I didn't know how good we had it. I didn't know how much I was risking. I didn't move. I didn't speak." She looked up at me. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I met her gaze and shook my head slowly. "I don't think forgiveness is the problem," I said. "It's that I don't recognize you anymore." She nodded like she understood, but I don't think she really did. You can't unring a bell. You can't unsee betrayal. And once the person you love becomes a stranger, it doesn't matter how many memories you lay on the table. They don't pull you back. They only remind you of how far you've drifted. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, she didn't ask why. She knew. For the next few days, we moved like quiet roommates. We didn't argue. We didn't fight. We just existed. Separate lives in the same space. And somehow, that felt worse than shouting ever could. It was the kind of stillness that comes after the storm, when there's nothing left to destroy. She stopped texting. Stopped apologizing. The letters stopped. The speeches stopped. All that remained was space. Wide, endless space between two people who used to share everything. And I didn't fill it. Because sometimes the only power you have left is your absence. And that was the one thing she couldn't explain away. After the silence came the letters. She never handed them to me directly. They'd just appear. Tucked under my pillow, left beside the coffee maker in the morning. Slipped into the pages of the book I kept on the nightstand. They came at odd times too. Sometimes I'd find one waiting when I got home from work. Other times in the mailbox like a ghost had mailed them. She didn't sign them with her name. Just left them blank at the bottom. As if writing the words was painful enough. And attaching her name would have made them heavier. Or maybe it was guilt. Maybe she didn't feel like she deserved to sign them. The first one I found was 2 days after I moved into the guest room. It was folded neatly and sealed with a tiny strip of floral tape. She had drawn a little heart on the back like she used to do in the early years when we were just dating. It almost made me laugh how wildly out of place that heart looked now. Like taping a cartoon bandage over a bullet wound. I didn't open it. I held it in my hand for a while, ran my thumb along the crease, then slid it into the drawer of my nightstand. Not out of malice. Not as a statement. I just didn't need to hear anything else from her. When you've already seen the truth through glass, words lose their power. Apologies feel like sand in your mouth. Still, she kept writing. The second letter came the next day, this one longer, I could tell by the weight of it. She had placed it on the driver's seat of my car. I almost sat on it without noticing. For a second, I thought about reading it. I even broke the seal. But the moment I unfolded the paper and saw the first line, I know I've said I'm sorry, but I need to explain why, I stopped. Because I didn't want explanations. I didn't want emotional essays, or reflections on what it all meant, or promises of change. I didn't want to watch her try to spin broken glass into stained art. I wanted truth, but that had already come and gone. Now all I wanted was distance. I folded the page carefully and slid it into the drawer with the first one. By the end of the week, I had 6. She was persistent, I'll give her that. Each one was different in size, color, and texture. She clearly put time into them. Some were written on plain paper, others on cards we probably still had left over from our wedding thank you notes. That one stung, seeing the script we'd chosen together now being used for damage control. One afternoon, I came home to find an envelope resting on the kitchen counter. No note, no heart this time. Just my name written in lowercase letters. Nathan. I almost ignored it like the rest. But for some reason, I picked it up and held it to the light. Inside was a photograph. No words, no letter. Just a single snapsh *T from our first vacation together. We were sitting in a rowboat, her feet dangling over the edge, mine planted firm in the middle, one arm wrapped around her waist. We looked young, open, free. I remember the moment it was taken. A stranger in another boat had offered to snap the picture, and Emma had laughed and said, "Make sure we don't look staged." We didn't. That was the cruel part. It was a good memory. Now it was ammunition in a campaign I never agreed to be part of. I stared at the photo for a long time before slipping it into the drawer with the others. Not because I wanted to preserve it, but because I didn't know what else to do with it. I wasn't ready to throw it away, but I couldn't look at it either. That drawer became a vault. Each letter added to it felt like another handful of dirt being shoveled onto a grave I hadn't meant to dig. And yet I couldn't stop collecting them. I think she thought the letters might save her. That they'd carry the weight her voice couldn't. That maybe I'd stumble across the right phrase. Some perfect string of words that would pierce my armor and remind me what we had. But here's the thing about love. Once it's been used as a cover for a lie, it doesn't come back the same. It's a house that might still stand, but the foundation is cracked. And even if you repaint the walls and replace the furniture, You'll always feel the shift in the floor beneath your feet. That Sunday, she left a letter on the porch, taped to the door, like she was afraid to come inside. I watched from the upstairs window as she placed it, stood there for a beat too long, then turned and walked back to her car. This one was different. It was thick, probably several pages. I didn't open it. Instead, I walked down, peeled it from the door, and slid it into the drawer with the rest. 7 letters now. 7 sealed attempts to rewrite the past. Sometimes at night, I'd lie awake wondering what they said. Wondering if she was telling the truth now, even if it was late. I imagined lines like, "I was weak," or "He didn't mean anything," or "I miss you so much it hurts." I imagined confessions, memories, vows to do better. Maybe even self-loathing. Maybe she finally understood the damage. But I never read them, because it didn't matter what she felt anymore. What mattered was what she chose. And she hadn't chosen me. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find her standing in front of the drawer. Open. She turned when she heard me, holding the stack in her hands. "I didn't know you kept them," she said. I nodded. "I didn't throw them away. That's not the same thing." She looked down, her eyes scanning the envelopes like they might speak for her. "Can I take them back?" she asked. "If you're not going to read them." I shook my head. "No." She blinked, surprised. "Why not?" "Because they belong to this version of us. And I'm not letting you rewrite it." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. We were past the tears, past the begging. I took the letters from her hands, walked past her, and placed them back in the drawer. Then I closed it slowly. She stood there for a while, like she wanted to say something else, like she thought there was still another letter left to write. But I just said, "We're not a story you can edit, Emma," and I walked out of the room. After that, the letters stopped. The text slowed. The apologies thinned out. She didn't bring up the past anymore, not directly. She started walking softer around the house, like a tenant waiting for eviction. Her bags weren't packed, but they might as well have been. And me? I kept doing the same thing I had been for weeks, waking up, going to work, coming home, and living in the quiet space between who we were and who we had become. Sometimes I'd open that drawer and look at the stack, not to read them, just to see them, to remind myself that love, when it dies, doesn't vanish. It lingers, in sealed letters, in photos from better times, in the hollow way someone says your name, hoping it still means something. But the truth is, those letters weren't for me. They were for her. Proof she had tried. Evidence she could carry later, to tell herself she fought for us when the damage was already done.